West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Florence Salknacki, and I'm joining you from what is going to be a very hot day in Scarborough, Ontario. I do hope that you're all comfortable wherever you're zooming in from. I'm first going to go over our land acknowledgement. West Hill, which is in Scarborough, is located in Treaty 20 and within the area of the Williams Treaties of 1923. These are the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and were previously occupied by the Seneca and Huron-Wendat First Nations. I believe that most of us are unaware that the world's approximately 476 million Indigenous peoples make up approximately 6% of the global population, and yet they play a vital role in biodiversity conservation. They manage or hold tenure rights to approximately a quarter of the world's surface area, accounting for a significant portion of the world's biodiversity, nearly half of the Earth's protected areas, and over half of the planet's remaining intact forests that are crucial for sustaining life on Earth. As treaty people, we support the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which under Section 10 tell us that Indigenous peoples shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. No relocation shall take place without the free, prior, and informed consent of the Indigenous peoples concerned. This declaration provides a roadmap to the advancement of lasting reconciliation with Indigenous peoples worldwide. The first reading, a poem by Ramsey entitled A Manifesto Forbidding Silence. Who will speak for Gaza's children if not you? We are all culprits, every minute another death. How can we pretend nothing's happening, act normal, watch a football game, take a vacation, chat about the latest stupid thing a celebrity has just done? We are all culprits, including myself, living a settler's life over here on stolen lands. Each month, the population shrinks another %. Water contaminated, diseases revived, bombs fall in safe zones, on tent cities, sheltering desiccated infants, while we pretend everything's normal, take a vacation, watch the football game. Suppressing what we cannot control. We want to help, but don't know how, so we pretend. My face is tired of that droopy-eyed look. My jaw is aching to breathe fire. I'm about to burst with rebuke for everyone, including myself, living over here a settler's life on stolen lands. The second reading is a poem entitled Spring. Colors intense, reborn in light, sharply striking shadows, symphonies of winged ones returning home. The third reading, again taken from an essay. When my daughter was little, we liked to walk around the lake looking for signs of spring. She was invariably the one to find the first flower, spotting that tiny patch of yellow dandelion amongst thousands of blades of grass. She loved blowing the seeds into the wind, unwittingly ruining the neighbors' lawns. The genocide the USA is supporting today in Gaza has very much to do with the daily mass murder of plants and animals for the mere aesthetic appearance of what we call civilization. In order to shed its genocidal roots, America has to embrace nature in all its diverse beauty. When we learn to love, admire the dandelion the way our children do, and respect that its right to life is no lesser than ours, we begin to restore our balance with nature, peace with each other, and climate stability. Taken from an essay entitled Genocide and America's Obsession with Mowing the Lawn. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in its light.
Ramsey Hanhan is a Palestinian Canadian and author of 2 books, an autobiographical novel, Fugitive Dreams, and a book of poetry and essays on Gaza, which are coming out soon. His short stories and poetry appear in the Harvard Advocate, Fikra magazine, and elsewhere. He also speaks publicly about Palestine, literature, nature, spirituality, and healing. Ramsey was formerly a physics professor, noted for his computer models that describe and predict complexity in nature. He holds a PhD from the University of Michigan and resides near Baltimore, Maryland. Please extend a warm welcome to Ramsey Hanhan.
Thank you all for this warm and loving welcome. I feel here among family and friends. And I just want to say how happy and pleased I am to be here today. We began this service with a land acknowledgement, and that's a really beautiful thing. I see the display over there, and it's important for us to acknowledge past injustices, but we must not stop here. Acknowledgement is not enough. We need to do our share to restore justice. And from what I read, I'm connected with many people online, and including people from indigenous communities. And even right here in Canada, indigenous communities remain threatened. They face difficulties. Women from indigenous communities face abduction, rape, and murder. Indigenous lands are shadowed by energy developers who want to take over them. And in USA, it's even worse. And so why am I talking about indigenous communities here? It's because we are all connected. All of us in USA, in Palestine, and in Canada, in Africa, in China, in Europe. The trees and the dandelions, the butterflies and the lizards, we are one planet. And the sooner we start behaving like we are one planet, the better it is for all of us. And you know, if you keep up with climate change and what's going on, it's easy to see how our actions in one part of the world can affect people somewhere else. So I've been here a year ago in April. I connected online and I gave a talk, and I've been thinking about that since. Is it our responsibility to care for one another? At what point does our responsibility begin or end? As the excerpt from Mowing the Lawn indicates, I tend to believe in Earth as an organism. We are all part of it, and we all contribute to its well-being or to the lack of it. If it's healthy, we all benefit, we all reap the rewards. And if it ails, we all suffer. You know, an example is if you have a headache, but otherwise you're in great physical shape. It's hard to convince yourself to get up and go for a run, even though your legs are working fine, but you have a headache and that thing is dominating you. And whereas if you don't have a headache, you might feel more energized. And the same thing works globally. The world today is extremely unwell. We hit talk of nuclear war about 3 times in 3 different parts of the world in the last year, between Ukraine and Russia and in the Middle East with Iran and other places. And so the converse is that when Earth is healthy, everyone benefits. Everyone feels inspired and energized and more productive. Everyone is blessed. And when Earth is torn by war and environmental damage, we feel that malaise. I come from Palestine, and a lot of the news from Palestine is not covered adequately in the media here in North America. USA is probably worse than Canada, but there's a big difference between what I see on my social media feeds and what I see from the television screen and the newspapers. And let me just say, I've seen way too many dead babies, children who have amputated limbs, who lost parents, parents who lost children, families that are torn apart. I saw way too many images of that, heard way too many stories. And knowing that babies are dying elsewhere in the world in such numbers robs us of our joy and motivation. It hurts our mental health and ultimately our own productivity. And in a way, I feel sometimes that natural disasters are Earth's way of warning us in a humbling way to let go of our tower of civilization and respect nature, respect its flow, take nature as our guide, embrace its music. I'm gonna read the spring poem again because it's short. Spring, colors intense, reborn in light, sharply striking shadows, symphonies of winged ones returning home. When we have the light, we don't have to fear the shadows because the shadows will disappear by themselves. And the last part about the birds returning home. When you think of it, birds migrate freely. There are no borders to them. Borders are such a ridiculous human invention. We take a piece of land and we divide it, and we exclude. The job of borders is to exclude people. And what we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks in America is protests. People are rising up against the government that's basically disappears people from the streets. And there were several videos where immigration officials would come to students who are just studying in American universities and just kidnap them and put them in jail, and for no other reason than them speaking their minds freely, exercising what is supposed to be a protected constitutional right. And what these raids from immigration have done is terrify everybody into silence. People are afraid to speak. The volume on my social media feeds went down. People who normally would post things stopped posting their opinions. Everybody is afraid. And that fear just helps those who want to oppress others. And in that context, our silence is harmful to us because if we see an injustice and we don't speak out, that injustice will sit within us and eat at us. And simultaneously, our silence and fear gives them power. We take that power back by losing that fear and speaking out in great numbers. Your voice matters, but it matters only when you use it. So that's the one side of it, is the fear. The other side of why people are silent is helplessness. Sometimes you do things and you do things and you do things and nothing is changing. The situation in the world is getting worse. And it's very easy to feel discouraged, to feel that, I've been speaking out since my book came out in 2022. So that's 3 years of talking about Palestine, and when I look at what's happening on the ground, everything is getting worse. And one thing I think about is that we're trained to distrust big ideas, to think that's far off, universal peace, the absence of borders, people living happily with each other. Those things would never happen. The world has always been a jungle, and, some ideas are just too radical. Thank you so much. But we cannot allow ourselves to succumb into this helplessness and despair. We need to learn how to empower ourselves. And the key to that is to recognize that we are part of the system that we want to change. So, in a way, our actions contribute to the way the world is. Every mile we drive, every dollar we spend helps the world be the way it is. So if we want to change the world, the first step is to examine our own actions very carefully and see what about our own actions we can change. And this goes back to the serenity prayer that Scott kindly volunteered. I really like your change, by the way. So this is a perfect time to reassess our relationship with the world. What changes, big or small, can we make to our lifestyle? And sometimes you may think, well, what about me? I'm just one person. I'm an individual. I'm very small. If I change something, that's not going to make an impact in the world. And that's why I invite you to look at spring. Trees lay bare in the winter. And here in Canada, I know you have very long winters. And trees lay bare for what seems like forever. And then buds sprout. And again, it seems like forever, but you wake up one morning and you see flowers of every color, and the next week it's green all over and bird songs fill the air. It's like a miracle, it's magic. But, when we look at it, spring is our proof that radical revolutionary change is possible, and it could happen very quickly. The secret in nature is that every leaf opens at the same time. They're all synchronized. Once they decide they want to open, they open on its own. And that change happens in the gentlest possible way. There's no war that goes on between summer and winter. It's just the leaves decide, okay, it's time for us to open up and get out and make the world green again. And that's what we need to learn from nature, is how to work collectively, how to work together towards the greater good of all of us. I had another quote that, actually, I'll talk a little bit about collective action. One of the things that happened over the last few years, especially since the COVID pandemic, is people became more isolated, more individualized. We hide in our own cubicles, our own homes, and connect with each other online. And it's great that we are able to connect across great distances, but at the same time, we need to dismount from that digital world whenever we can and meet other people and relearn human connection. Today, when I walk around, everybody has their face in a screen. This room for this hour has been the exception from like 24 hours of people having their heads either in a computer screen or a TV screen or a phone or an iPad or whatever. And I've been talking to my daughter about that many times without much success. And you know, there was one time I like to run. One time I was running around this lake near where I live, and I get to this place where there's a lot of people, so I have to navigate. There's a cyclist and a grandpa pushing a stroller with a baby inside, and people walking, and someone running, and they all have their heads in their phones, even the grandpa. And I find myself the only person who made the eye contact with the baby. And that's a harsh world for that child to grow up in. This is not how my childhood was like. So we need to really think about that. You know, even the cyclist was, you know, that's dangerous. So we have all been touched by violence one way or another, and we need to focus on healing those scars from former violence. And I've been thinking about that too. Here in North America, it's popular to say, well, we need to pursue nonviolent change. But what do we really mean by nonviolence and violence? And it's difficult because our understanding of violence hasn't really evolved since the Stone Age. Somebody takes a club and beats someone else. That's obviously violence. We can all agree on that. But a drone pilot sitting somewhere here pushes a button and a bomb falls somewhere else in the world and kills people. It's harder to connect with that and see that as violence. Even harder, some apartment, residential building housing manager would sign a line that raises the rent, and a family would be made homeless. We don't call that violence at all, but it is. So the burden of nonviolence is often misplaced upon the oppressed. But the entire society is violence, because that violence is not individual, but it's systemic, it's structural, it's institutional. And so if we want to affect it and prevent that violence, we have to look at our own role in what we do. You may have never held a gun, but just by participating in a violent society, we are supporting it. I live in USA. In USA, 13% of the government's budget is spent on organized violence, on the military. And if I pay taxes, I'm contributing to that. Even if I manage not to pay taxes, find a way somehow, I'm spending money at restaurants, buying clothes, paying rent, and the people I work with will have to pay taxes. And so ultimately, just by being in that society, I'm contributing to that violence. So if I want to de-escalate, I have to look at my own role. I have to stop subsidizing it. And unfortunately, war is profitable. What we see in the Middle East, there's companies right now that are rubbing their hands together and thinking of how many billions will they make by selling those weapons that are being tested in Gaza, that are, the people's lives that are destroyed don't matter to them. They put profit over people every time. And so we need to educate ourselves and learn which companies are doing that and making conscious choices when we go about our own lives to reward and deal with people who share our values. And that includes corporations, and stay away from others that don't share our values. We live in a very different world than ever before. The concentration of wealth is into the hands of a very few people around the world is more than ever. I believe there's about 4,000 billionaires around the world, and that's they're the ones who actually call the shots on a lot of things. So that goes back to the first line from the first poem. We are all culprits. We can't look at that person and say they're violent because they're fighting something. We are all participating in a violent society, and if we want to change that, we have to address that inconsistency in what we're doing. Doing nothing to stop violence is also violence. So my simple advice would be to re-examine your lifestyle and how you spend your time and money and labor. It's not easy. There are some hard choices. Some things will be easier to deal with than others. If you're working for one of those companies, Microsoft, Google, all the big tech are investing heavily in AI. And AI is being used in the Middle East to target people, to identify, who would be a future terrorist and kill them when they're a baby, which is, I don't know what law is that, but it's a madness that swept over the tech industry. And AI is simultaneously being used to deprive people of their jobs. Amazon is going to lay off many people. They just announced it because they're replacing their customer service with AI. So if you work for one of those companies, you can't just quit your job and then you'll be on the street. So you have to, maybe plan. Maybe it will take a few years. Maybe you need to change careers. I used to be in science. I used to be an accelerator physicist. And I wanted to study science for peaceful purposes, to do good things to the world. But what I found is a lot of the science funding in the USA comes from the military, and you're almost forced under certain administrations to get grants from the military to do science. And I didn't want to do that. So sometime about 2009, I decided I want to quit science and I want to move to writing. I didn't actually quit science until 2019. It took me 10 years to build up for that, to save enough money so I could be out on my own for a few years, to write my book, to read, to study. And it was a long transition, but in the end, I feel happier. Am I still contributing to violence? Yes, I'm still living in the USA, but I'm reduced one of the factors that was really troubling my conscience. And, if you have a retirement plan that invests in the stock market, you have to take a careful look at those investments because that's your money. And if those investment fund managers are taking it and giving it to those companies to do war, then you want to do what you can to take charge of your own power to change things. Driving creates a need for oil, a need for energy, which is fueling a lot of wars and has been fueling wars in the Middle East for decades. Can we move towards greener things ourselves? And the easiest way to do it is if you have a job far away and you commute a lot. Can we take public transportation? Can I move closer to home? Can I move closer to my job? Those are tough choices. They're not easy. They're not, they're more of a lifestyle change. But I think the world is getting to that point where we need to seriously think about these things and consider them and make our own personal plan for how am I going to live my life according to my values. And it's going to be a different plan for each one of us because we're all different. We have different circumstances, we have different needs, we have different family situations, but so what you do and how you solve that problem is ultimately up to each and every one of you. But at the same time, we know we are one community, we are one planet, we are all in this together. And as one planet, we are all going to sink together, or we are all going to prosper and thrive and succeed together. So justice is really what matters more than phrases to me like nonviolence or even peace. Peace is nice, but justice is really what's important, and we need to all work towards that. I have copies of my book. If some of you are interested at the end in buying copies, I'll be happy to sign them. This is it. It's called Fugitive Dreams. This book describes its autobiographical story about my childhood in Palestine and my journey to North America and my thoughts about the future. This book was published in 2022 in October and covers about 50 years of history presented as personal stories, as what it means to real people on the ground when you hear about those things in the news. How does it affect real people's lives? I have a new book coming out. I've had some delays with my publisher, who's it's the new book. I haven't decided on the title yet either. Not sure if it's going to be Palestine Bleeds for You or Gaza Bleeds for You. But it's a documentation of how genocide looks like from this side of the world. Me being a Palestinian, living in the USA, experiencing what the USA and its so-called ally Israel are doing to my people. And my focus in this new book is on personal responsibility and why it matters to break our individualist isolation and reclaim human connection.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.